What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Groovy Sama again, bro. Back with another video. We are reacting to top two only purest, strangest, dark, and mystery stories. This for mature audience only, man. We finna get into some Mr. Ballin. Okay, one thing I do like about Mr. Ballin, bro, I feel like some of his shit is true, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie, bro. This nigga, I used to watch this dude all the time, bro. Like, it's just, I don't get scared, but when I'm in the night time, it's dark outside by myself. I was the person that didn't play Black Ops 2 Zombies. Black Ops 3 Zombies, right? Bro, I don't play no zombie game by myself, bro. I don't care. All y'all, bro, I do that shit solo. Man, y'all got it. Y'all got it, bro. I don't do all that scary stuff. I really believe in all that ghost and shit. I'll try to stay far away from that. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, as long as I got the Lord, my Jesus is my Christ, my Savior, and shit like that, I should be good. But without further ado, man, let's get to the video, man. This nigga scary as a motherfucker.
Today, I'm going to share two very bizarre missing person stories, and they're both
missing people. This shit true. See, I'm telling you, bro.
very unique. In fact, the second one is so memorable, I think a lot of you will retell it to your friends and family because the ending is unexpected, to say the least, and really paints a good picture of what strange, dark, and mysterious content is all about.
Why am I doing this shit, bro?
If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story form,
I'm not, bro. Like, I don't know why I do this to myself.
Once a week. So if that's
Once a week.
Please sneak into the like button's house and eat like 99% of all their ice cream, leaving just a very thin layer of ice cream at the bottom, and then place that nearly empty container back in the freezer. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into
what the fuck this about, man?
Around 1 a.m. on August 27th, 2000, a fisherman named Sam Watts did his best to keep his balance on the wet deck of the huge commercial fishing boat that he was working on. And as he tried to do that, he looked over at his crewmate, Michael Edwards, another fisherman, who was grabbing onto the mast as the ship rocked underneath their feet. Sam and Michael,
yeah, I don't fuck with the sea, bro. I stay on land.
Had just dropped their anchor 56 miles off the northeast coast of Queensland, Australia, and up until about an hour earlier, the sea had been very calm. But now, you know, this huge storm had rolled in, the wind had picked up, the waves were huge, and while the four other crew members had already gone below to try to catch some sleep, Sam and Michael were now on the deck, doing their best to try to secure everything before they went down below. And so as the wind is whipping and the waves are smashing against
damn.
Sam and Michael decide they
hell nah, bro. Get me off the bro, chill, bro. I don't do that shit, bro. We're not supposed to be out here for real, bro.
To make sure everything was
why me though?
When they reached the center, they would be good and they could go down below. And so they did that. Sam went to the front, Michael to the back, and as they began to work, they kept constant eye contact with each other because this was obviously a very dangerous thing they were doing. But at some point, as Sam was making his way, he had to duck down to check a particular fastening. And so when he ducked down, he lost sight of Michael just for a second. But in that split second, this huge rogue wave smashed the side of the boat, capsizing it,
Michael dead.
Sam flying towards the railing. But
Sam dead.
Grabbed onto the railing before being thrown into the water. And then as the boat kind of began to rock back to level,
you went in the water.
Sam instinctively looked back down the ship to look for Michael, and he watched through the darkness and the rain as Michael went careening off the side into the ocean. He hadn't been able to grab onto anything. And so the instant the boat kind of leveled out again,
so I don't do this shit,
Michael,
man.
But he couldn't see him, and so he ran down below, woke up the whole crew.
Hey, Michael dead.
Later,
hey,
the crew was on deck.
Yo, Michael dead. He flew off the boat. Get us back on land. Fuck no. I'm not searching for this nigga, bro. Michael, bro. See, you on a boat with me, bro. Just know if anything happens, nigga, Sama's not here to save nobody. Who am I to rewrite God's by the way, you died, nigga. Fuck. Guys say die in the ocean 2:00 p.m. You dying in the ocean 2:00 p.m.
You know, through this big storm,
I can't save you.
And at the same time, the captain had come up and he was on the radio talking to police. And so several minutes later, a police boat managed to come out to the fishing boat. And at the same time,
how the fuck y'all get out here?
Desperately looking for Michael. They haven't found him yet. And now the police began circling around the whole area, calling out for Michael.
Bro, Michael's gone, bro. I'm here. Nah, bro, you're done, bro. Y'all just said, you seen those waves, bro? Like, come on, bro, you're done.
And so all that
nigga.
into the early afternoon,
He's gone.
to look in the area
Shark probably ate his
you know,
eye.
the crew on board the fishing boat did the same thing.
Whale probably
Still,
swallowed him or
nobody
some
could find
shit.
a trace of Michael. And so around noon that day, the search was called off, and the police told Sam and the rest of the crew of this fishing boat.
Damn, I stopped searching after one day. That's
You know, at
kind of
this
crazy,
point,
though.
it seemed very likely that
Shit,
Michael
I'd have been
was
searching.
gone.
I would have stopped
And so,
searching
of
that
course,
night.
Sam and the rest of the crew
Wait till the morning,
were
die.
basically shocked.
See me
I mean,
fine. This
happened
nigga
so
washed up
quickly.
somewhere.
How could it
I'm
be
not
that, you know,
finding
Michael
nothing
just
in
a
this
few
dark.
hours ago was joking around with them, part of the crew, and now he's dead? I mean, it was just unbelievable. But now, unfortunately, Sam and the rest of the crew had to basically put their grief aside and make a very practical, albeit very cold, decision, which was, you know, even though Michael's dead, do we stay out here and continue fishing?
Fuck
Or
no!
do we just go back home?
We going
I
home.
think that decision was actually super easy to make. That, of course, you know, they would pack it in and go back home. How could you possibly stay out here and go fishing, considering what had happened? But you need to understand, it cost a lot of money to go out on these fishing excursions, and they.
Man, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Get my money back, bro. Get my fucking money back, bro. You ain't say that we was going out here in storms and shit, nigga. You said we was just going out and fish. I don't know why we fishing in the nighttime, but fuck it. I thought I was gonna see some glowfish. I don't fucking know. I watched Disney Channel when I was young. Hey, get my money back, bro. We going home. I'm not staying. Drop me off now. If y'all ain't dropping me off, bro, I don't think I didn't come out here with something.
They had just left, and so they had not caught anything. So they had spent all this money, and they had no return from it.
I don't give a fuck.
And these fishermen were not wealthy. In fact, honestly,
Nigga.
they needed the money from this trip just to provide for their families. And so if they did
fuck.
turn around right now,
I gotta provide for my family, bro. Dude, I ain't gonna lie, that is tough, bro. You gotta provide for your family. You gotta do what you gotta do, bro. But I'm gonna provide for my family some other how. Drop me off.
I mean, it would really hurt all of them, and it would also
Drop
make it
Sama
really
off,
hard to
nigga.
get the funding again to go out later.
Gee, Sama
After
gotta
some
get
pretty
dropped
awkward
off.
Deliberation, the crew decided that, you
I
know
don't
what,
give a
we're gonna
fuck.
stay out here and fish. But the silver lining was, hey, you know, if we stay out here for another day or so, you know, maybe Michael's body will float to the surface, and we can at least recover him.
Yeah, that's what I said when we come back.
And so all
In
day that
search.
day, the fishermen stayed out.
Not stay out here.
And they were very successful. I mean, one hour.
Damn, that motherfucking fish got some big ass lips. What the fuck? Is that real? Bro, we live amongst beasts, bro. Like, what the fuck? Bro, look at his eye, bro.
That were 6 feet long and nearly
6
100
feet.
pounds. They're called
6
flowery
feet. 6 feet? That's bigger than me.
Odds. But
That's bigger than me, right?
Was for their business.
That's
This was
5'11".
not
Bro,
a
they
proper
caught me, bro.
celebration because
Nah,
they just
100 pounds, though,
celebrated
that shit ain't nothing but
before.
damn.
And so it was a very somber day, and all
6
day, all the
feet?
fishermen really are looking
That
out
thing's
at the
6
water,
feet?
hoping to see
But that's a
Michael's
big
body.
ass fish. That shit don't look that big. That's a
24
big ass
hours of
fish.
fishing,
Or is it different,
didn't see
like,
any sign of Michael,
is feet and
so they
fish
packed everything in,
sizing
went
different
back
from
to
human
work,
sizing?
sold
Like,
off all of their cod that they
6 feet,
caught,
6 feet,
and
bro.
then
Like,
the fishermen went
am I
back to their
tripping?
families, and
let me know down in the comments and say down below.
a few days later, a factory worker was standing in front of a fish processing line with this huge 97-pound cod right in front of them. This is one of the flowery cods that Sam and the other fishermen had caught 24 hours after their friend had gone overboard. And so this worker took their knife, and like they did...
Just because I want to go in that ocean, I don't want to eat that shit in that ocean. I eat the fuck out of all that shit. I don't give a fuck what it is. Not everything. I'm tripping. I eat fish, though, for sure. Shrimp and all that shit. Mussels and all that.
And then they began to swim.
I ain't eat no fucking squid. You
A
tripping.
few days earlier, after Michael
I don't know what the fuck that shit been.
during that storm, he
What the
very
fuck they was
likely
doing
had
down there?
arrived when he hit the water. But the area where they were fishing off the coast likely had been alive when he hit the water.
Mr. Ballin, bro. He might have been alive when he hit the water. Why wouldn't he be alive when he hit the water? It's water. I don't think the boat was that. You gotta drown. You can't just die. Unless you falling from the Twin Towers, nigga, all the way down to an ocean of water. That's the only impact that I know that you. Cause I see people dive in a pool. You know the little sports shit. They die. Yeah, I see that shit all the time. Why the fuck would he be dead when he hit the water? I don't get that. I mean, I don't know.
But the area where they were fishing off the coast of Queensland, Australia, was known for having lots of sharks and saltwater crocodiles in the area.
Man, what the fuck? Why we here? Bro, get me out of here, bro. Crocodiles? Bro, what? Bro, you got sharks and crocodiles, bro? That's literally saying bro. You got salt crocodile? I didn't even know that was a thing. You got sharks and crocodiles, nigga? Why the fuck am I here? I don't want to see that shit.
Much immediately, Michael was attacked by either a shark or a crocodile or maybe both.
Yeah, bro, Michael's gone, bro. Like he's not Aquaman, bro.
His
Like
head got ripped off and began to float away. And at some point, one of those huge flowery cods saw the head and ate it whole. And then later that day,
what the fuck? Nah, them niggas eat head.
Who caught Michael's head. And so that factory worker who
niggas eat
that particular cod saw
cods
Michael's
eat fucking
undigested
head.
head looking up at her, and apparently
Bro.
his face was fixed in terror.
Cods eat people? Like cods eat fucking meat?
With his eyes wide and his mouth open, as if his final moment had been him screaming.
Flower cod. If those niggas eat us, you think that I'm finna be in the ocean? If that shit's nothing compared to a fucking shark. That shit's nothing. That's food. That's food to a shark. That's like to a shark. Crocodile. You tell me you got sharks and crocodiles in that bitch. You tell me that little thing ate his head whole. He's 6 feet too. Yeah, bro, that mouth bigger than what you expect, bro. That bitch got a fat ass. I'm talking about, bro. You ate that nigga whole head, whole. And you talking about let's go, man? I'm not never, and I'm not. Nah, fuck that ocean, bro. Y'all got it.
I was in the military. And while I was in the military, I definitely had some pretty wild experiences all around the world. Okay, back to the story.
Yeah, bro. Like, thank you for your service, though, bro. Type shit. Okay, I'll send your ass the channel.
On the afternoon of July 13th, 1994, a man woke up feeling very confused and disoriented, and he felt some pain in the back of his head. And as he opened his eyes, he kind of slowly realized that he was on his back in a ditch on the side of the road, looking up at a big blue sky. The man tried to sit up, but as soon as he did, he felt this throbbing pain in the back of his head.
I had that shit today, bro. I had a mad headache.
The second he did, it hurt even worse, and he definitely felt there was a big lump on the back of his head. And then when he brought his hands in front of his face, he saw he had all these bruises around his wrists that he had no idea what they were from. And so as this man in the ditch is trying to figure out what's going on,
lost his memory.
Suddenly, this older man who he didn't know just appeared by the side of the road and looked down and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And so the guy in the ditch is looking at this guy. He's got no idea who he is, and he wants to say, like, what's going on? Where am I? Who am I? What's happening? But he couldn't find the words. It's like he just kept looking at this older guy, looking at his wrists and feeling his head and having no idea what's going on.
That shit's scary as fuck, not knowing who you is.
3 names popped into this guy's head, the guy in the ditch. He thought of 3 names. He had no idea whose names these were, but for some reason he felt like those names were really important. And so after a few minutes of awkward silence, as the guy in the ditch is trying to talk, he finally just blurts out these 3 names. He says, Pat, Joel, Chris. And so the older man who had asked the guy in the ditch what was going on, he didn't really know how to react to this guy blurting out these names. And so he kind of ignored it and just said, okay, hi, my name's Steve. And then Steve, the older man, helped the guy from the ditch out of the ditch. And then once the man in the ditch was on his feet, kind of looking around, he looked at Steve, and suddenly he could say other words. And he said to Steve, "Where are we?" And Steve looked at him and said, "We're in Cheyenne, Wyoming." Now, the guy in the ditch didn't know why, but he immediately felt like Wyoming had to be wrong. Like, there's no way he could be in Wyoming. But the guy in the ditch didn't know where he was supposed to be. He didn't know who Steve was. He didn't know who Pat, Joel, or Chris was. And so it's all totally confusing. And so he just stood there kind of saying nothing. And as he did, Steve said, "Hold on a minute, I'm going to get my stuff."
Wyoming.
Kind of
That's a
down the
weird
road,
ass
like
place
10,
to
20
be.
feet away, where there was a shopping cart full of cans. And
Hey, y'all niggas live in Wyoming? I feel like Wyoming, I feel like when I hear that name, or like, I feel like it's just land. Because I don't know, not a goddamn thing for Wyoming. It's like a nature for, like a, is it like a natural habitat or something? Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I just feel like, I just think of land, like those mountains back there type shit. Yeah, that's what I think of. I think about hiking. Yeah, that's what it is. Think about hiking, national parks and shit. That's what I feel like Wyoming is.
there was a backpack and some other things dangling
I
on
don't
the
know,
side. And as Steve grabbed the shopping cart, turned it around, and slowly began pushing it back towards the guy in the ditch, the guy in the ditch stared at Steve and kind of put together that, Steve must be homeless. And this realization made the guy in the ditch think that, maybe he was homeless too. And so suddenly, instinctively, the guy from the ditch began reaching into his pockets, thinking maybe he had an ID or something that would show him who he was, that would show he was not homeless, that he had a place that he needed to go to. He reached in his pockets, but there was nothing. All he found was 23 cents and a comb. And so by the time Steve came over with his cart and asked the guy from the ditch, "Hey, do you want to come to the shelter with me?" The guy from the ditch was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll go with you." And then once the guy from the ditch and Steve arrived at the shelter, when
Steve probably homeless too.
The guy
Like,
from
come on,
the ditch
slide,
had to
gang.
introduce himself to the people who ran the shelter, and so he made up a name combining one of those names that was running through his head, Pat, with the color of the desk of the person who was asking him for his name inside the shelter. And so he just called himself Pat Brown.
Oh, bro, how did I know that nigga name was gonna say Brown? Bro, I was like, Brown. That sound red instead of Pat Black or something, Pat Orange. Like, Brown just sound
inside of the shelter. He went to bed that night, still having no idea what was going on, but he felt confident, if I just sleep tonight, I'll wake up tomorrow, and I'll know what's going on. I'll figure out, what happened to me. But the next day, when Pat woke up, he was still completely confused, did not know who he was, had no idea what was going on, but he had the wherewithal to know that, something bad must have happened to him, and maybe he should go talk to the police, because maybe they would know if other people were.
He's probably running away or some shit.
Pat walked from the shelter to the police.
He said he had bruises all over his hands. It ain't look like a car crash or anything. He probably just running away. He fell out of the ditch and busted shit.
Was on duty, and Pat just began explaining to the cop as much as he could remember. He said, yesterday I woke up in a ditch. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. I think I have amnesia. I just keep thinking of three names in my head, Pat, Joel, and Chris, but I have no idea what they mean. Can you help me? Now, the cop who's hearing this did not think, "Oh my goodness, this is totally legitimate. Let's launch an investigation."
I'm like, bro, get out my face.
Instead, the cop was like, "Is this guy on drugs? Is he mentally ill? What's going on with this guy?" But the cop would say, Pat was incredibly polite and did not appear to be intoxicated. And so the cop humored him and said, "Okay, you know what? Let's look through the recent missing person reports in the area to see if somebody matching your description."
What you mean the cop humored him, bro? Hey, bro, you a public servant, nigga. You better take that fucking case. You might be famous, nigga. Shit, fucking Wyoming. Since it sound like no nothing go down there anyway, nigga, you might be fucking talking about some. I humored them, just fuck it, let's do it. Like nah, nigga.
Description, is a missing person, and so the cop began going through the database, but he couldn't find anybody that matched Pat's description. And so at some point he said, "Look, I can't really help you very much here because you're a grown man. You do not seem to be in distress here. And even though it's
look at my arms, bro.
You can't remember who you are or where you need to go or where your family is. That's not really a police matter." But as he was saying this to Pat, who's kind of crestfallen, he's putting his hands near his face and just kind of reacting to this news that the police are not going to help him. And the police officer says, "Hold on a minute, look at your hand." And so Pat looked at his hand, and he saw, there was no ring on his left ring finger, but there was a pretty obvious callus where a ring should have been. It looked like, Pat must have been wearing a ring up until recently.
How the fuck you realize that shit?
And so the cop said, hey, it looks like you may be married or were married for a long time because you got that callus. But, beyond that, I'm sorry, there's not much else I can offer you. And so even though this was somewhat valuable information, it didn't really point Pat
Your boy
in any
married.
direction. And so he was about to turn and leave when the cop said, hey, do you want to ride to the hospital? Because it seems like you could be having some sort of medical event here. But Pat politely declined and just told the officer to please be in touch with him if anybody came calling looking for somebody that kind of seemed like him. And the police officer said he would. And so after this, Pat left the station and went back to the shelter and basically told himself, I'm going to stay here and just wait until my memory comes back. Because at this point, that was kind of all he could do. However, weeks would go by at the shelter and nobody would contact the police looking for somebody like Pat Brown, and Pat wouldn't remember any more details. The only thing that kept coming into his head was those three names, Pat, Joel, and Chris, but that was it. And so finally, after a few weeks of no progress being made, Pat decided he would leave the shelter in Cheyenne and go to Jackson, Wyoming, because some other people in the shelter had talked about Jackson, Wyoming as being a place where people who don't have ID cards could get jobs and basically start over. And because Jackson was only a little over 400 miles away from Cheyenne.
Oh, shit. Jackson, Wyoming. Okay. People don't got ID, you can get a job still, you can start all over. New social security number, all that shit. I'm okay, I'm right there.
It was not unreasonable to try to...
It's good to know, man, you know what I'm saying?
And so almost exactly 2 months...
Just in case, you know what I mean? Something crazy got happened.
Hitchhiking his way towards Jackson. And then when Pat got to Jackson, he was able to get a job without an ID. He got a job at a newspaper, sorting mail and doing some clerical work. And at first, he stayed in the shelter like he had in Cheyenne until he had saved up enough money to rent a room. And as the months went by in Jackson, Pat did begin to remember additional details about what seemed like his former life. He discovered while doing clerical work at the newspaper that he was able to use an adding machine without looking at it. It was like his fingers just knew where to go. He also discovered that he was able to do really complex math problems in his head. And then also,
fucking genius.
Being at the newspaper, he saw a lot of information about the stock market, and he actually seemed to know a lot about the stock market.
That nigga rich.
Also, while Pat was in Jackson, he started to feel this really intense compulsion to go to a Catholic church. And so he began going to Catholic Mass, and while he was in church, he just automatically began saying the prayers along with everybody else, even though, again, he didn't really know why he had that information in his head. But the biggest clue that came back to Pat while he was in Jackson was this recurring dream he would have, where he was at this campground somewhere, and this little boy comes around the corner and looks up at Pat and says, hey, Dad, Mom needs your help with Chris. And then in the dream, he responds to his child by saying, okay, Joel, I'll be right there. And so with all these clues kind of coming back into focus, Pat sort of felt like he had a grip on who he was being. Based on the callus on his finger and on that recurring dream, it did seem like he was a married man who had at least 2 kids, Joel and Chris, and so his wife was very likely named Pat, or maybe Pat was another child he didn't know, and then also he felt like he must have been maybe an accountant or somebody who worked with numbers, based on the adding machine and understanding the stock market and complex math problems. And also, he was a devout Catholic, because that's the only way he would know all those prayers.
Oh, he probably gay.
Kind of putting together who he seemed to be in
Catholics don't play that shit.
That didn't really tell him anything about what he should do now. Like, he didn't know where his potential family was, or where his job was, or where he should go. And so even though he had this kind of former life formed in his mind, he couldn't act on it. And so Pat's weird life in limbo in Jackson, Wyoming, just kind of continued to drag on. And so by the end of 1997, so by this point, 3.5 years since Pat has woken up in the stitch confused, he's still in Jackson, Wyoming, he still has no idea who he is, and it's starting to set in that unless he takes drastic measures here, he'll never figure out the truth about who he is. And so, early in 1998, Pat does take drastic measure. He contacts a very popular TV show at the time called Unsolved Mysteries and asks them to please cover his story, because if they did, it would be broadcast across the country and maybe somebody out there would recognize him and come find him. And sure enough, when Pat contacted Unsolved Mysteries, they thought his story was totally insane and they covered it. Pat's episode aired on April 10th, 1998, almost exactly...
Let's go look up the episode.
And on the day his episode aired,
That's how you know this
in a
shit,
city
like,
in
based off
Indiana,
true stories. I fuck
1,500
with
miles
shit.
away from Jackson, Wyoming,
You can
a phone
probably look that
rang
up.
at
It's
a
probably
woman's
is.
house.
Like
So they
that
answered
guy
it.
that been showing this probably him,
Cousin.
the old
Her
man.
cousin told her, "Stop whatever you're doing and turn on the TV. Put it on channel CBS." And so this woman, she walks into the living room, she turns on the TV, flips it to CBS, and she sees an episode of Unsolved Mysteries is playing.
probably him.
It's Pat Brown's episode. And this woman is staring at the TV, and she practically faints when she sees what it's about. But she stays composed and just stands there staring at the TV, so
That's
shocked
husband.
she can't even say anything. And the whole time, her cousin is yelling through the phone, saying, "Can you believe it? Oh my goodness." And then at some point on the TV, a phone number flashed at the bottom of the screen where the producers of the show told the audience, "Hey, if you know anything about this case, call this number." And so with this, the woman who's watching the TV, she hangs up on her cousin and she dials that number she sees on the TV. Pat's drastic decision to call Unsolved Mysteries would indeed solve the mystery of who he was. However, the truth about who Pat was is not what you think. It would turn out some of the clues that Pat had sort of naturally recalled in those 4 years that he was kind of figuring out who he was were indeed clues of his former life. He really was a married father. Those 3 names, Pat, Joel, and Chris, those were the names of his wife and his 2 sons. Pat was his wife, and Joel and Chris were his 2 sons. And he really was a devout
wife named
Catholic,
Pat, what the
which
fuck?
is why he was able to remember all of those prayers. But some of the other clues he thought of over those 4 years, like his incredible aptitude for math, or the fact that he could use an adding machine without looking, or the fact that he understood the stock market so easily, those were clues about his former life, but specifically, they were clues about why Pat was in this position in the first place. It would turn out Pat Brown was actually a man named Carl Brodnick Jr. And Carl Brodnick Jr. was a wanted felon who had misappropriated tens of thousands of dollars from the advertising agency where he worked as an accountant. And Carl had been under serious criminal investigation when he suddenly disappeared from his home in Indiana on July 8th, 1994, which is 5 days before Pat
Damn.
Brown woke up in that ditch on the side of the road.
So, like-
bump on his head, markings on his wrist.
So, like, I feel like I heard about something like this before. Because it was something like where bro didn't remember himself, so they couldn't arrest him because he's not who he was. I don't know. I feel like I heard something about that, though. For some reason, I feel like that picture looked kind of familiar, too. I feel like I heard it about this case. This is off a true story, I think. Because I don't think they could, like... I guess they was trying to figure out if they should arrest him or not. Because it's like, he don't know who the fuck he is. But they don't know if he was trying to play it or... I don't know. We finna find out.
And having no idea who he was or what happened to him. Now, there has never been a perfect explanation for what actually happened to Carl, but if you think about this logically, his claim of having amnesia is very likely true. Why would a guy use amnesia as his cover story to flee the law, run to Cheyenne
I got amnesia,
and
fuck.
say, "I don't know who I am, I don't know what happened to me,"
And then try and get
what,
found.
A few years later,
Yeah.
go on national TV and out
Find
himself
him.
and totally make himself
That's a
target for
mastermind
release.
plan,
It
though,
doesn't
if
make
you
any
think
sense.
about it.
And
It's
then
380.
also adding credibility to this idea that maybe something happened to Carl versus Carl running off to save himself is we know that when Carl disappeared on July 8th, 1994 from his home in Indiana, he took out $1,000 in cash from his checking account and then also took out another large sum of cash from his home's second mortgage. However, when he woke up in that ditch, all the money was gone. He just had 23 cents in his pocket. Now, after Carl vanished from his house in Indiana, police did go looking for him because he was under criminal investigations. They wanted to find him. And they pretty quickly found his car 250 miles away from his home in a strip mall parking lot in Missouri, but there was no sign of Carl anywhere. And then right after the police found his car, they checked Carl's credit card and they discovered it had just been used in Colorado, so 900 miles away.
They're like, what the fuck going on?
But when they went to that store and tried to find security footage of, when that transaction took place, there was no footage. And so there was no way of knowing if Carl really was the guy in Colorado making that transaction or if somebody else
He had a
his
partner?
credit card. And then after that, there were no other leads. Nobody had any
Somebody
idea
stole his
what
shit.
happened to
Give me
Carl.
that shit.
His
Cost
family
twice,
didn't
twice,
know.
twice.
The police had nothing
Probably
to
that
go
old
on.
man that saved him. He
So
took his
very
credit card. He's like,
quickly,
give me that
his
shit.
case
You
went
remember
cold
yourself? Alright, I'll
until
take that.
4 years later,
Swipe,
when that
swipe.
episode of Unsolved Mysteries
Oh,
Now,
bro.
there are many
You remember
theories
yourself?
that could have
Give me
happened
that
to
credit.
Carl, but the
Yeah,
leading
come on.
theory,
Let's go.
but again, is just a theory, is that Carl may have been in debt to some very dangerous people. And so when he fled his home in Indiana, it's very likely that he was not running from the law, even though he was under criminal investigation. He was actually running from these dangerous people. And that the reason he might have been stealing from his company was to pay off these dangerous people, but apparently it wasn't enough. Hence why he decided to just kind of take off and run away. And these dangerous people seemed to have caught up to him, and they captured him, and it looked like they tied his wrists at some point because of the marks on his wrist. And they very likely tortured him or something, hence why he had this very serious head injury. And
he beat his ass.
They dumped him on the side of the road, very likely
Damn.
He might have thought he was dead already, but he didn't die. And when he came to, he must have
come
really
back for
had
your
amnesia from the injuries he sustained from these bad people that chased him down. But again,
wasn't this like a movie or some shit?
When Carl's episode of Unsolved Mysteries aired, it was his wife, Pat Brodnick, who was the one who saw him on TV and couldn't believe it and called it in. And then when she called this in, at first, Carl...
Bro, are you in danger? Wyoming.
Big happy reunion. Carl comes back home, he sees his wife and his kids, and then he's immediately arrested and prosecuted for embezzlement. Now, ultimately, Carl would plead guilty to the charges against him, but he would say the whole time, I don't remember committing this crime. I don't remember anything. And so ultimately, Carl did not get sent to prison.
Yeah.
He instead served time on probation.
Yeah, I heard about this shit.
He just went back to living as Carl Brodnick Jr., despite still having huge gaps in his memory, at least according to Carl.
That nigga remember that shit. He like, alright, I remember now, but I ain't saying I'm fucking go to prison. Alright, man, that's all for this motherfucking, that wasn't even scary. That was just dark and mysterious. That was cool, though, but like, hey, man, it's all for the YouTube video, man. It's a quick or something. We got the video, comment down below. Hey, subscribe if you're new. Hit that like button, and we out, man.